Good morning, guys. Welcome back to Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all these naked people. Yay! We have a fun guest on today by the name of Demi Mundane. Say hello.
Hi, y'all.
Hello. Demi is a trans porn star, cam girl. What else do you do? I don't know much about you. This is the first time I'm meeting you. Yay!
Mostly I do camming and porn. Lately it's been mostly doing like mini vids and my own stuff, but I do studio shoots as well. It's been a hot minute since I did a studio shoot, but hopefully I'll be doing a tour down to the States soon so that I can hit that up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you. Okay. Let's get started with a couple things that you do. So you mentioned you do porn. Mm-hmm. You mentioned you do camming as well, some studio shoots and stuff as well. So lots of naked stuff, which is fun. Lots of naked, sexy stuff, which is great. I guess maybe I'll let you start whatever route you want to go down. You want to maybe talk about your role in porn, how you got started there.
Yeah. So I guess I got started in sex work because prior to transitioning, I dated a lot of sex workers. And so I was always just adjacent to sex work communities. Obviously, my partner Grace is a dancer with you.
Yes, and I want to get you on. I want to get Grace on the show too at some point. So,
Grace had kind of, I guess Grace and I were both kind of tangentially doing a little bit of sex work before 2017 when we both kind of got more into it. I had a very rough 2017.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. My mental health had just been kind of not great for the previous year, which ended up with me leaving my job that I've been working at 6 years. I was design and marketing lead for a web app company.
Whoa!
Yeah. And so...
Muggle life.
Yeah, exactly. And I just got to a point where I just couldn't keep doing that job, so I left it. But my mental health was not great, so it was hard to get a new job. So I ended up losing my apartment and then had to give up my dog, and she ended up getting put down by the people who adopted her.
Oh my God. So one thing after another.
Yeah, Grace and I temporarily broke up over that year, which was hard. It was just like a rough slew of things.
Yeah. I can imagine. Jeez.
Yeah. And I kind of, for years and years, even before I transitioned, I always had this kind of thought that if like shit hit the wall, I would move to Montreal and do sex work. I don't know why, that was just something that I had always kind of thought, and 2017 shit hit the wall. And so I moved to Montreal and started doing sex work.
Oh, wow.
It was a bit of a weird time when I started. I think a lot of people turn to sex work in times of
desperation.
Yeah, desperation or just like when things aren't going quite as expected.
Right.
And so that was definitely the case with me. But I'm really glad I came into this community. Like I said, it's something that I've been interested in and kind of around a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm really, despite having a lot of shitty things happen to get there, I'm glad that I ended up where I'm at.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So a couple things. So why Montreal?
So, so I guess this has to do with my transition a little bit. I started thinking about transitioning when I was about 16 or so. I think that's around the time that I started realizing that like that was an option.
Right.
I had grown up hearing about trans women, but like the way that trans women were represented in the media in the early 2000s was very much one of two narratives. Either you could be the kind of unfortunate mentally ill trans woman that I think there's a lot of portrayals of in media, and it's usually portrayed by cis men, often comedian cis men, who are kind of poking fun at trans women.
And perpetuating that
exactly.
stereotype. Right.
And the other narrative is kind of these trans women who are portrayed as men who are so gay they have to take the next step, and are often shown as kind of seductress types. And often in media they're played by cis women who are, the gag is that they used to be a guy kind of thing.
Right.
And so I'd been around those narratives all of my life, and neither of them really like resonated with me. And I think it was around when I was 16 that I started being like, wait, this is not just a thing that shitty characters in TV shows do. It's something that's actually available.
Right.
So I started looking into it, but I never actually transitioned until I was 23 or so. So there was about 7 years of my life that I was kind of humming and hawing as to whether transition was something I wanted to go through with. When I was really feeling like I wanted to transition, often I felt that I would have to leave a place where people knew me and kind of start fresh.
Yeah, because you're almost like changing your identity a little bit.
Not just a little bit, huge
like
amount.
A lot.
Yeah,
certainly.
And there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether friends and family are going to accept you for that. So the idea of completely removing yourself from where people know you and kind of starting fresh is very appealing.
Right.
And since a lot of my gender stuff was wrapped up with sexuality stuff, with kink, with whatever else, Montreal was very appealing, being the kind of Sin City of the North that it is.
Right, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I love Montreal.
So that was where the kind of romanticizing of Montreal came from. Amazing. It was far from home, and it was a place where it sounded like I'd be able to explore myself a bit.
Right.
So that's my very tangential answer to that question.
That's a great answer. No, it explains a lot. And how was your experience in Montreal?
It was good. I think, like kind of everything that running up to Montreal, my mental health was still a bit unstable while I was there. So it wasn't as good as it probably could have been. But I'm really glad I was there for a year and a half. I got a lot of space that I needed to kind of, even though I'd been out as a trans girl for like 3 years by the time I moved there, I got some separation from family and people who'd known me for a long time that allowed me to kind of rediscover myself a lot and kind of explore the world of sex work along with that.
Yeah, it's like the stripper capital too of Canada. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of strip clubs there, a lot of massage parlors, a lot of,
And I think Pornhub was born there too.
Yeah,
the founders
Pornhub,
were there.
many vids, browsers, pretty
everything.
much,
So it kind of made sense for you to go there. Mm-hmm. How was your experience, I guess, transitioning with your family, your friends that are around you, people that have known you for your entire life? How is that whole situation?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Yeah, my immediate family was relatively supportive, which was nice. I think for most people, I think earnestly tried their best. Some people didn't really get it, but still wanted the best for me kind of thing. I think what kind of distanced myself and weirded people out a little bit more than my transition was when I started doing sex work, because I was very open about getting into sex work when I started. Mm-hmm. Open to a point that I kind of regret it now, but...
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I regret why? Like, what part would you regret?
Okay, so this is another tangent here.
It's okay, we love sidebars here.
Okay, cool.
It's totally fine.
Prior to getting into sex work, I'd been writing for a popular web magazine called Mashable.
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with Mashable.
Yeah, so I'd been writing for them for about a year and had gained a bit of a popular following with a project that I worked on with them. So I had a pretty big social media following. And when I started doing sex work, I was kind of presented with this dilemma as to whether I should keep my established online persona separate from my sex work persona or whether I should melt them. And at the time, I was of the mind that I wanted to be kind of fully open and honest with people on the internet and in my life, and also that it was a lot of work trying to keep the two lives separate and never touching, especially when I was already somewhat present on the internet. And at first I tried to keep them a little bit separate, but there was always these collidings. People in my cam room were often spamming my real name because they recognized me. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to own it. I'm just going to combine the two personas and just be open with my sex work persona. Mm-hmm. So I did that. But what I kind of failed to put together was that there was a lot of family and friends of family that followed me on my kind of non-sex work persona who are now exposed to this side of me. My mom's coworkers, whoever else.
Just a lot of collateral.
Yeah, It was a lot of crossover that I didn't really anticipate. And also, as I started doing sex work, I was exploring kink a lot. So I was posting a lot of this kinky shit that was like sometimes kind of questionable as to whether I should really be sharing this. And so I have had a lot of repercussions in my personal life of people kind of being a bit weirded out by seeing a lot of me that maybe they didn't want to, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, I think if I could go back in time, I would have done that a bit differently. But also, like, I think there is some power to being that open to not hiding myself. I'd spent so many years in the closet, so many years kind of having to keep certain parts of my life separate that when I started doing sex work, I just didn't want to have to deal with being in the closet again. And I think that was...
And it's almost freeing that way, too. It's super, like, such a relief to not have to hide anymore, right?
Totally. And I think it was that for about the first year, and then I started kind of noticing the social consequences of my choices, and then I was like, oh, okay, maybe this wasn't the best idea.
Well, I think it's also like a problem too with our generation, like, you know, millennials, we're constantly oversharing everything, right?
100%.
And it's encouraged too, like Instagram, like, it's not just pictures, it's videos, it's everything. Like, it's people want to know your lives. Well, I don't know if people want to know your lives, but you want to share. And that's kind of like the society we live in now, is just to be like, have your whole life on display.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big, like, cultural questions and difficulties that millennials and Gen Z are having to deal with, is Gen X and the boomers. I think they don't really understand that. And it's very difficult when us as the kind of first generation living our lives online are being very open and very honest and
raw.
And raw, but then also trying to find employment under Gen X bosses and boomer bosses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in the last couple of years, I've been kind of looking at maybe getting a muggle job again.
Muggle job.
Or just kind of having that as a backup for when I decide to leave sex work.
Right.
And now that I've been so open with my sex work stuff, it's like kind of nerve-wracking.
Right.
Considering applying for jobs. So.
It can be really tricky too, because like I was job hunting for 9 months. So I guess you don't really know me that well, but I work in a corporate job, so 9 to 5, and then I also kind of moonlight sometimes and do some dancing on the side as well, just because like I love performing, I love dancing, and I also love being naked, so it's like a natural fit. Plus I would consider myself an exhibitionist, so yes, it just fits. But I remember me job hunting for like a considerable amount of time, like 9 months. I could have had a baby, you know what I mean? Totally. And I was like considering like maybe I should just become a mom. Like thinking all these stupid things, but anyways, I was in a bad place this year, and mental health was not in a good place as well.
I've had that. I should just be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Okay,
good. It's like a natural thing. Yeah. But anyways, like I was doing my job hunting for almost a year, and because I am so open on my social media as well. Families on there, friends, like dad's friends, I don't know, mom's friends, like second cousins, like everyone, right? Yeah. And I always tend to forget like who's following me and stuff too, and I'm always so open about like, hey, I'm dancing at Penthouse, or hey, like come see me here, and like, you know, I posted like a lot of photos from like my photo shoots, and usually it's a lot of boudoir, like lots of like very like nakedy type of themes, which I enjoy. But my mom like had a conversation with me, and she was like, you know, maybe you're not getting a job because of what you're posting online. And she brought up a really valid point, and I'd always like that thought would always be at the back of my mind, but I would just kind of be in denial and be like, well, you know what, I don't want to work for an employer that wouldn't like has those views, you know what I mean? Totally. So but I'd always forget like, okay, like who's following me, and like I have to be aware of like the content I am posting, but at the same time I am owning it. Like I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah, totally.
You know, so yeah, it was like kind of tricky, but luckily I was able to find something that was like within my skill set and stuff too. But yeah, it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. But can you tell me about like your life before you got into sex work, and like why you decided to leave, and how like that transition was?
Yeah. So like I said, I worked for 6 years as design and marketing lead for a web app company. I was very... Like, prior to transition, I was very kind of tech bro-y.
Oh, wow. You're in the right city for that, so.
Yeah, well, I was in Victoria before.
Oh, okay.
But yes, still it was a lot of tech stuff going on.
Right.
And I really did enjoy the tech industry for quite a while. I think when I transitioned, I was already working so hard at my day job, and then adding transition onto that, which is like a full-time job of like rediscovering oneself, doing that kind of personal work, and also like trying to figure out hair and makeup, like all of the stuff that a lot of cis girls kind of have to deal with and process in their teen years. I was doing in my mid to late 20s,
right,
alongside having a full-time job, which was difficult.
Yeah, I'd imagine super stressful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, puberty sucks the first time around. Having to deal with it when your parents aren't like covering all of your shit. Like, yeah, it was a whole big deal. So yeah, I got a bit exhausted from that, and then I started writing for Mashable about trans issues, and then I started working with trans youth support stuff, and I was also feel like there's another part-time job I'm missing. Anyway,
all the jobs.
Yeah, I was just like doing all of this work, and in 2016 I just like burnt the fuck out, and just I also felt like I kind of lost respect within my job before leaving, partly as a result of transitioning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and maybe this is an unfair assessment, but it felt very much like I was pretty, I guess, well established within the company. I had a few people who worked under me.
Yeah.
I was also the youngest person on the team and the only femme presenting person on the team. Mm-hmm. And I think before I was femme presenting, I had a lot more respect from the people who I worked with.
Really?
And when I started presenting femme, I felt like I kind of lost a certain amount of that respect, especially from new hires.
Oh.
I had a few men in their 40s who were working under me, essentially, and it felt like they had a lot of issues taking, I guess, receiving guidance from a girl in her mid-20s.
Right.
And it reached a point where I couldn't deal with it anymore. And that's when I kind of bounced from that gig. And then had that really interesting 2017 and ended up doing sex work. So.
Amazing. So that's incredible. That's a lot to go through. Holy crap.
Yeah, the last few years have been intense. But
things are hopefully better now, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Perfect. So why don't we talk about, I guess, did you first start getting into porn first, or was it camming?
Camming, definitely.
Yeah, it was a good entry level, I guess.
Yeah, it's easy. And even before I'd left my real job, I was doing some camming here and there, just kind of as a fun thing.
Like dabbling with it.
Yeah. And like as like a trans woman, especially in early transition, it's hard to feel kind of desired and sexy. We're often not portrayed as desirable. There was that whole thing with Victoria's Secret that the CEO said that we sell fantasies and that's why we don't hire trans women models, because trans women aren't a fantasy.
Right, I remember that. That was like a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, it was like a year or two ago, and then she ended up getting canned and replaced, and now they have trans models.
I was just going to say, It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess camming first.
Yeah, sorry.
Cool.
Yeah, so camming was a way that made me feel very desirable. Having people pay me money to see me naked felt really good. So it was kind of more of a self-esteem booster at first, and then eventually became the main money maker.
That's amazing. We did an episode, I guess it's airing this week, obviously, guys, we're recording in advance. We did an interview with the girl from My Free Cams, Shay Cutie, and she kind of explained like how camming works, and there's kind of like a niche for everything.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's so many different kinds of girls. Like we went online and looked at the website, and there's like so many different styles and stuff too. I guess that would go the same way for trans too, or is that itself just a niche?
So that's something I kind of come up against my own self, is I really like doing kink and fetish stuff. Mm-hmm. But often trans women are seen as inherently a fetish. It's almost like, studios especially, but also just producing indie content as well. People like their fetishes to be just that thing, and crossover often limits you.
Right.
So when I want to do heavy kink stuff, sometimes I find that there's not as much interest for that because people just want the chick with a dick fantasy kind of thing.
Right. And that's like kind of like stereotypical, like super, like that's kind of the first thing that people what comes to mind, I suppose.
Yeah. So sometimes I find that's kind of a difficulty, but also like trans porn has grown so much in the last couple of years, and there is more and more demand for that, for trans women doing like really intense kink stuff, I think.
Oh, good.
Natalie Mars is a really popular trans porn star who's been doing a lot of kink stuff that's been very popular. Yeah, trans porn has kind of gone mainstream since I started.
Awesome.
It's been nice.
It's been good, obviously, and beneficial for you.
Yeah.
Okay, couple things here. So porn, and I want to talk to you about kink and fetish as well. So
Okay.
I guess let's start talking about porn.
Okay.
And how did you get started with that?
Well, I've been camming for a while, and it's hard to, since there's so few, since the amount of trans girls doing sex work on the internet is a lot smaller than the amount of cis girls doing it, because there's just less trans girls out there.
Right.
It's kind of hard to exist as a trans girl on the internet without having somebody contact you about shooting porn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a few scouts that are kind of notorious who kind of just... I had messages in my inbox on Instagram before I'd even started doing sex work of people being like, hey, you should do porn.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was just like when I kind of decided that I was going to start doing sex work, I just kind of found whoever messaged me most recently, hit him up, and there's kind of one guy in Canada who does a lot of solo shoots and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And he's in Montreal.
Oh, okay.
And so I ended up working with him, and we did, I think, like 5 solo shoots together.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that? Was it hard to get into that, or?
Yeah. The first couple of scenes were a bit rough.
Really nerve-wracking. Like, I would be super nervous.
Yeah, like, I often say that trans girls have the hardest job in porn, because in kind of the normal straight porn, the girl has to look pretty and perform for the camera, because usually it's the girl who's in shot and the guy is kind of just like a headless cock in the
always.
Yeah. And the guy's responsibility is to stay hard and fuck.
Yeah.
Trans girls have both of those shared responsibilities. So it gets really fucking hard to like look pretty, stay hard, and also like take a cock up your ass.
So many things going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my first couple of shoots, like they were solo shoots, so I was mostly playing with toys and stuff, but it was really tough to like focus on like, how is my face looking? Is my cock still hard? Gotta stay relaxed so that I can like take something on my ass.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really hard. I remember my first shoot, it took me like 45 minutes or something just to get hard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah. So that
like
was
no pressure.
Yeah, and it's really awkward because there's just somebody sitting there with a camera just like waiting for you, and you're just kind of like... So I was making jerk off motions for all of you who can't. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a bit awkward, but you get used to it. You learn some tricks. Yeah.
What are some tricks?
I mean,
if you want to share.
I feel like for me, I need to kind of like learn to dissociate while still looking sexy, where like let my mind go off to fantasy land, do that thing while also still like having some part of my brain remaining and working it for the camera kind of thing.
Right.
Which is kind of hard to do sometimes, but yeah.
Can you tell me about the process, I guess, like when you first start shooting porn? So somebody contacted you, you got back to them. How does it all work? How do you know it's legit? Like, how do you protect yourself?
Yeah.
What are some precautions? I have so many questions. Ah!
Yeah. I feel like I at the time I wasn't fully aware of those things. I was just kind of like I said, my life had kind of fallen apart a little bit, and I was just like, fuck it, whatever, I don't care anymore, I'm just doing whatever. I guess that's not true. I did, because on Twitter, Vito, the photographer, reached out to me, and he was like, hey, I work for Groovy, which is like the big trans porn company.
Okay.
And he was like, I'd love to do a shoot with you, blah, blah, blah. But his Twitter account, like, didn't have that many followers. I had no idea, like, how... like whether or not he was telling the truth.
Yeah, if he's legitimate.
Yeah, so I asked him, I was like, hey, is there any way that you can like show me that you are attached with Groovy? And he had the guy who runs Groovy DM me and say yeah, Vito's one of ours and stuff like that.
Oh, good.
I think a lot of porn, in my mind, and I've only done a certain amount of porn, so other people might disagree with this, but I feel like there's kind of 3 main tiers to porn. There's kind of the indie stuff where it's just a few performers getting together and selling stuff on their ManyVids or their personal sites or OnlyFans or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's, on the other end, there's the kind of high-end Brazzers and stuff.
Right.
Where it's a full set,
it's a full shoot,
team. Yeah, exactly. There's scripts and a director and all that stuff. But the vast majority of porn that you see on the internet kind of is in this middling zone where it's just there's a photographer, he is director and everything producer all together. And they're just kind of pointing and kind of suggesting things for you to do, and you kind of make it up on the spot. But because of that, there's a lot of people who are just kind of getting into porn because they feel like they can do that, So in terms of trying to weed out the people who are doing a good job versus the people who are just trying to see some girls naked, ask around within your community, figure out if they're kind of respected, follow them on Twitter for a while. Often you'll see, there's even some very popular people who I'm not going to name because I don't want to start shit. Yeah. But you'll see people who are less professional often will be trashing other girls on their social media. That's a very common thing that I've seen.
Because why?
Just, I don't know, because they're insecure and they
need validation or something.
Yeah, exactly, and feel like it makes them look more powerful.
Oh, God.
By bash. Yeah. 9 times out of 10 don't trust the cis straight men who are making money off of you.
I was going to say.
Yes, we often do need them. Maybe not need them, but we often have to interact with them within our industries, but never trust them.
Pro tip, guys. Pro tip.
Yeah, and that goes with all sex work. I'm sure within dancing you've come across that as well.
Oh, definitely. In terms of photographers and stuff, everyone's a fucking photographer on Instagram. I get it. But there's so many ones that oh, I want to shoot you naked for free and I want to do this and blah, blah, blah. I'm who are you?
Yeah.
And I look at your work and it's super amateur and I'm goodbye.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Nothing's legitimized at all. But yeah, there's a lot of that stuff too. And, a lot of people try to promise you things. And you just have to kind of do your due diligence and just do your homework and take those precautions. And,
totally.
Yeah, because you never know. There's been a lot of... I think there was a couple photographers. There used to be an Instagram account that kind of warned the model community about photographers. I can't remember what it was called anymore, but... Same kind of thing, though, too. Mm-hmm. Speaking on the lines of safety, how do you do a lot of, partner porn?
I've done, a lot of kind of trade shoots where we'll shoot a bunch of content with another performer, and then we'll both take the raw footage and edit it on our own ways and release it on our
cool.
respective sites and stuff like that. I should probably do more of that because, duo clips definitely sell a lot better than solo clips in my experience. But
how do you ensure your safety and and your health and all that as well? What kind of precautions do you take? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's kind of the in terms of physical health, there's kind of the gold standard of testing. In the States, they have talent testing services. I guess they have it here now too, but it's not as common to get your gold standard from talent testing in Canada as it is in the States. But that's just a list of the kind of common STI, STD tests. And I think you have to have it done within 30 days, but preferably 2 weeks before shooting with anybody. And it's good to kind of, usually when we do a trade shoot, we'll show each other our tests, take pictures so we both have copies for our files. Also, exchange IDs and fill out the content release forms and stuff for each other. And get that kind of out of the way. In terms of just making sure that people are chill, because these shoots are for trade, looking at people's sites where they sell their clips and stuff, so that you can get an idea that they have shot with other people, reaching out to other performers that they've worked with, stuff like that.
And not just fake.
Yeah, exactly. And often, when you ask other performers, even if it is an established performer that you're working with, they'll be able to tell you kind of the ins and outs. Because even of established guys in particular in porn. Some of them can be kind of douchebags. Or some of them can be perfectly fine as long as you just kind of stroke their ego and whatever else.
Right. Yeah. They exist in every industry, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, people often, like, my normie friends will often ask me if I have to deal with, like, shitty dudes within my job. And I'm like, yeah, obvi, but, like, you have to deal with shitty dudes and
everywhere in life. Yeah. Doesn't matter what industry. They're just everywhere.
Yeah.
So obviously, trans, like, porn is very, very niche, I would say. Kind of spoke about, I guess, kind of like the stereotypical scenes and whatnot to how do you differentiate yourself from the rest?
Well, like I said, I like to do a lot of kink stuff. In mainstream trans porn, it's a lot of kind of more vanilla-y stuff. And then in kink porn, I would say the most popular roles of trans women is as the dominant, because straight dudes love thinking about sucking girl dick. It's like their favorite thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of that. I like to do a lot of submissive trans girl stuff, which is less common, but growing in popularity. Like I said, Natalie Mars does a lot of that stuff and has been making it more popular. I think as the trans porn industry grows, at least I'm seeing a lot more guys who are like, I don't really care that you're trans. Like, I like hot girls, and I like hot girls being submissive, and don't really care if you have a dick or not. Like, so there's a lot more leeway in terms of that.
That's awesome.
The kind of sissy fetish is a whole big thing.
Can you explain a bit about that? So, for people that aren't familiar.
Yeah, there's this fetish that a lot of straight guys and probably an equal amount of closeted trans women and also just trans women who are into this kind of sissy fetish where it's a mixture of kind of forced feminization, as well as kind of, for cis men, I think it's a lot of you're not man enough kind of thing. Let's dress you up in pigtails and a skirt and whatever else.
Right.
I think it still appeals to a lot of trans women because, one, often before we transitioned, that was something that we used to kind of express our gender fluidity and kind of feel safe doing that. And two, for me at least, I found my interest in the sissy fetish kind of shifted as I transitioned. It became less you're not man enough to almost a fetishizing of not being woman enough.
Oh, so on the flip side.
Yeah, I feel like
that's cool.
Often fetishes are what we often fetishize what we don't have control of over in everyday life, and things that sometimes hurt us in certain ways.
Right.
And for me, a lot of my interest in the kind of sissy fetish comes from experiencing a lot of trans misogyny in my life, of having people telling me that I'm, or having narratives come at me that trans women aren't actually women, that we're just some sort of like weird perverted men or whatever.
Right.
So to a certain extent, there's a part of my subconscious, I guess, that thinks that taking control of those scenarios and intentionally subjecting myself to them is kind of hot.
Yeah, it's kind of hot.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. And I think there's also a whole other, in terms of kind of porn viewers, there's kind of two people who enjoy seeing me act out sissy fetish stuff, which is men and closeted trans women who wish that they were me in that scenario, and then there's men who like the idea of dominating somebody within that role, of saying, oh, you're not quite man enough, you're not quite woman enough, and I'm going to use that to kind of dominate over you, hold over you kind of thing. So that's
fascinating.
That's kind of a fetish that I've been exploring a lot lately. Part of the reason is that I think I'll have less, or I'm getting my titties done soon.
Yay! It's so exciting.
Yeah. And I think when I get those done, I'll have less access to that fetish. So I'm just trying to pump out as much content along those lines.
Take advantage while you have it.
Exactly, because it is such a huge thing. Like, for people who might not be aware of this fetish, it's like a really, really popular one. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. How did you get into fetish, into kink?
Yeah, so prior to transition, my only real acts, like, I always had a drive towards femininity. And I think some trans women before transition allow themselves time and space to explore femininity a bit in their presentation. I was very intensely in the closet, and I repressed the shit out of any sort of femininity that I had.
Wow.
And so when I was accessing porn on the internet or online sexual communities of whatever sort, that was often the only space where I allowed myself kind of leeway to explore femininity.
Because it's like such a private thing?
Yeah, because it was, I was able to do it without kind of...
Nobody will know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for your eyes only. Right.
And when you're kind of existing in those spaces for such long periods of time, you end up finding kinky stuff eventually. And I mean, like I said, when you repress something, when you don't want to acknowledge something about yourself, your brain has a natural way of fetishizing that.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So I think that's how I got a lot of... I was trying so hard to be the kind of macho man and like all that stuff that...
You're like you're almost overcompensating at that point.
Yeah, so then I kind of started fetishizing the submissiveness, fetishizing femininity to a certain extent. And because that was the only space in which I felt comfortable accessing a more diverse sense of gender, a more diverse sense of sexuality, spent a lot of time watching online porn and involved in online kink communities, and you kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit.
Totally.
So by the time that I transitioned and started feeling more comfortable with my sexuality, it was just like finally getting to do all these things that I thought about for so goddamn long.
Yay!
Yeah, very excited.
What kind of kink are you into?
Everything.
All the things. All the things.
All the things. Not very into poop, and I'm not very into like anything gory or that can like leave a permanent mark, but otherwise like I'm fucking game. Hit me up and I'll probably be into it.
Do you ever go to like Sin City or like fetish nights and stuff like that in Vancouver?
Yeah, absolutely. I love going to fetish parties.
Great community
and
for that here.
Vancouver Fetish Weekend is so much fun. And I did the Montreal Fetish Weekend as well, which was also fun.
How was that in comparison to Vancouver?
Okay, so the Montreal Fetish Weekend often brags that it's like the biggest one in North America or the biggest one in Canada or whatever. But they have like multiple events every evening. So it's very spread out. You go to an event and it doesn't even if you go to the main event of the evening, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of people there. Whereas Vancouver Fetish Weekend, there's just one event per night. Yeah. And you go and everybody's there and it's a fucking party. So I personally preferred the Vancouver Fetish Weekend.
Yay!
But, the Montreal Fetish Weekend did have a much more like community, and there was a lot more opportunities to play at Montreal Fetish Weekend.
Okay.
Whereas Vancouver Fetish Weekend, because it is very party oriented, and it's like there's so many people there. Getting access to a play space is less available, you know?
Can you speak more about Vancouver Fetish Week? We're not sponsored by them, but...
Yeah, it's dope. I mean, it's just I think it's technically the weekend, but it runs for like 4 or 5 days. There's a cruise.
Yeah, the cruise and stuff. Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah, it's dope. It's a really fun time. There's workshops and stuff. Some people just go to parties. Some people are more interested in the workshops. People come from everywhere. Like every year that I've gone, I've met people from all over the place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Super
really
diverse, right? Can you tell us about, I guess you have to, there is a dress code, I think, for Fetish Week.
Depends on the event.
Right.
Yes. Some events will have, like, there'll be rubber events and you have to be wearing a certain amount of rubber.
Oh, wow.
And then other of them, you can come dressed whatever. Other ones, you have to have some sort of visible fetish wear. And,
yes, it just depends on the theme or whatnot.
Yeah.
Cool. What kind of workshops do they have there?
I don't know. I've the workshops. I'm sure it's like rope stuff and like how to negotiate boundary or not negotiate, but like communicate boundaries and stuff like that. Workshops on all sorts of things, I guess.
All the things. That's so fascinating. You're so diverse. I'm like, I just feel like this is just not enough time to cover everything. I'm like, I have so many more questions. Oh my gosh. Okay, but we are running out of time for my podcast. I'll just have to get you back on. Maybe with Grace.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yes, I still need to reach out to her again. Grace, if you're listening, you're next. I guess we'll go into some Q&A because there was a few questions that we had here. So this one sounds like really, I don't know, vague.
Okay.
Said, what was your first show? I'm not sure if they mean like first scene or something else.
Yeah. My first scene was a solo shoot.
Right.
It was pretty like basic. I don't know. I feel like we shot 2 scenes that day. And we kind of did like a nice one and a naughty one. And a nice one, I was kind of playing the shy and demure thing. But also like, I don't know. People can go and find my first scene if they want. It's under my old stage name, Courtni Demilune, on Canada Tea Girl. It's the name of the website that it's on. The guy who was shooting it asked me while I was on film, he was like, what's your biggest fantasy or whatever? And we had just been talking about fantasies, and I kind of mentioned one that was like pretty risque. And I kind of blanked when he asked me that question, so I said the really risque one. And it's one of those things that I kind of am a little uncomfortable out there, that me saying that.
What was it? Actually, you'll have to repeat it.
Yeah, I'd rather not repeat it, but
you guys can find it, guys.
If very interested, they can go and find my first scene on Canada Tea Girl.
There we go.
Yeah.
I also want to ask you, I forgot to ask, so you changed your name from Courtni to Demi. Is there any like reasoning behind that, or just change of identity? Or
I think this goes back to when I first switched over my kind of muggle social media to sex work stuff. I wanted people to still be able to recognize that it was still me, so I chose a stage name that was incredibly close to my real name, just a couple letters off kind of thing.
Okay.
And that felt good at the time, and it provided a sense of continuity to me. However, over time, one, I didn't like the name because it was very difficult to spell, and I feel like people were struggling with that on search sites and whatever else.
Okay.
And two, I just didn't like having my stage name be so similar to my real legal name. So that was, I kind of like played around with a few ideas and then settled on Demi Mundane.
There we go. Yeah. Cool. What is your preparation ritual for a scene and days leading up to and on the day of?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, anal prep is the biggest thing. I'm putting big things up my butt.
Yeah, that's huge preparation for that, guy.
Yeah. So lately I got, I usually eat pretty well the day before, but I try and eat things with, which type of fiber? There's 2 types of fiber. The one that makes things pass through you quicker. I try and keep a lot of that going the day before.
Right.
In the past, I used to try and fast for 24 hours before. I find that often just makes me cranky and tired and like difficult to perform the day of. So yeah, I'll just eat a lot, but I'll eat stuff that's going to pass through me pretty quick. Day of, if it's a morning shoot or early afternoon shoot, often I'll either skip breakfast or have a small breakfast.
Right. I
have a shower head attachment that goes up my ass and cleans everything out. I find that's a little bit easier than the bulby anal douches.
Right.
But it is a bit more messy, so there's that. About an hour before my shoot, I'll take an Imodium because that'll kind of clog everything up and keep everything safe back there. Sometimes if I'm feeling a bit bloated, I'll take like a diuretic tea or something like that that's going to make me feel less bloated.
Right.
Stretching is really important, especially if you're going to be shooting with somebody else or bottoming or whatever else.
There's a lot to prepare for.
Yeah.
Lots of things you have to think in advance.
Totally.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And often another thing is if I have enough heads up, I will try and refrain from orgasming for a couple days because that'll make getting hard on set a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Great question. Thanks, Chris. I'm pretty sure Chris sent that in. Okay. Well, I guess we kind of addressed this a little bit, but we can definitely go in more detail if you'd like. What was the process like for you on leaving Muggle life behind? That's from Ray de Soleil.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, everything had kind of like fallen apart around my ears.
Right.
So it was just kind of things had already been left behind, and in a somewhat dramatic way. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of thought into it at the time, like not to get too dark or whatever. I was like pretty suicidal, and sex work and exploring my sexuality and exploring kink were kind of the few things I was excited about left in life.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy to focus on those and kind of like exclude everything else. Like I said, I kind of have regrets about how focused I was. But yeah, as much as I might have regrets, I think that's just part of life, is doing things that maybe weren't optimal at the time and kind of trying to figure out how to work with them more in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, look where you are now. You've come such a long way.
Well, thanks.
It's incredible. Okay, a couple more questions here. Homemade porn versus commercially produced porn. So I guess that would be more indie versus like stage, I would say.
Yeah, so like I said, I haven't done very much like high production porn. One thing I will say is that unless you're living in a porn hub, like like a city that has a lot of porn production going on, like Vegas or LA to a lesser extent now, because they have the condom laws there now.
Oh, wait, what?
LA County, you need to be wearing a condom on set, which is somewhat uncomfortable when you're fucking for hours on end.
Yeah.
So they've moved much of porn production out of LA into Vegas and San Diego and to a smaller extent the Bay Area, I think, but I'm not super familiar with that. But yeah, so unless you're living in one of those areas, it's very difficult to maintain a career just doing studio porn.
Right.
And often, especially once you get your own indie site established, often you're going to make more money sharing content on your indie site than you would be shooting a studio scene.
Oh.
So in my experience personally, I look at studio shoots not so much as an opportunity for money, but an opportunity for exposure.
Right.
It's
like a marketing platform almost.
100%.
Right.
And like the fact that you get paid for it is kind of a bonus. But because of that, like I talked about earlier, you often have people coming to you asking to shoot for whatever reason, shoot for their own sites or whatever. And 9 times out of 10, unless they're like unless they have a really big audience or something like that, it's usually better to do a trade shoot, in my opinion, because then you have content to sell yourself,
right?
Which helps build up your own reputation, build up your own clips that you can sell, and yeah.
Right. Wow. So much to consider. I guess on that note, best porn sites out there for distribution. You mentioned ManyVids.
Yeah.
A couple others as well.
I like ManyVids. They've been really good to me from the get-go. I got to do ManyVids Loft in early 2018, so that was really fun.
Cool.
I was on I Want Clips and amateur porn. I really like I Want Clips' custom order form, the way that they do custom orders. I really enjoy it. But I never made that many regular clip sales. Amateur porn I made very little on, though I have some friends who fucking kill it on there, so.
It just depends, right?
Yeah, it depends on who you are as a performer, what type of content you do, how you like to use your sites or whatever. I've heard from a lot of people that Clips for Sale has a ton of sales on it, because it is like the oldest one of those sites.
Which one?
Clips for Sale.
Oh, Clips for Sale, yeah.
But their site hasn't been updated in like 20 years. It looks like it's straight out of 1999. And it's very difficult to use. And they're also like, to get started with them, you need like 10 clips, and you have to put a lot of effort in to get started with them. So I've never used
a lot of
them.
work.
Yeah, but I've heard that from more established girls in the industry that they're probably number 1 or number 2 in terms of sales.
Oh.
Up there with ManyVids.
Cool.
There's also Model Hub now, which is Pornhub's version, which apparently is also very good.
Wow, there's so many out there in case you guys are interested. So.
Yeah.
Last couple questions. Do you prefer taking it or giving it? What's the better orgasm?
Oh.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm definitely a bottom, so I like taking it a lot more. When I top, it's often just for a scene. I very rarely top in my personal life, though there was a time where I just said I didn't top at all, and then in the last year or so, I've opened up a bit more to it. So
cool.
Yeah. Good
questions. Last question. Weirdest request or scene you've ever done?
Oh God.
I got excited there.
I ended up not doing this one because I was kind of uncomfortable with it, but it was real weird. This guy wanted me to do a kind of like me talking to the camera thing, that I was a cam girl who used like military drones to like take out the people watching my porn while they're watching it.
What?
Yeah, so it kind of had this like snuff fetish thing to it, and that's why I was kind of uncomfortable with it.
Right.
But it was kind of a creative request.
Very creative. I've definitely never heard of that before.
Yeah.
That's definitely very interesting. Well, with that, that brings us to the end of this episode. Wow, that was so incredible. Such an eye-opening and amazingly informative episode today. Thank you so much, Demi.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Where can we find you?
DemiMundane.manyvids.com is my main kind of thing right now. I might be getting back on Chatterbait sometime soon, and my username on there is xAddieRay, which was my very, very first stage name.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Went through a couple changes.
Yeah. So if you're a Chatterbait user, I might be back on there sometime soon. But right now I'm kind of focusing on ManyVids. So.
Awesome. Instagram if you want to post that.
Oh yeah, my Instagram and my Twitter are CyberSexBarbie.
Love that name. So great. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another great episode of Strip by Sia. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, and follow Strip by Sia on Instagram. My personal one is Sia Steph, and we will catch you guys for another episode. Thank you again, Demi, for coming in. And tune in again next Sunday, and have a great weekend, guys. Peace.
Peace.
That was great.
You're listening to Stripped by Sia